Wednesday, December 28th. I'm Abby Huntsman in for Ainsley Earhart this morning. We begin with a Fox News alert. The White House says it wasn't me. The Obama administration again denying its involvement in that anti-Israel resolution, as Secretary of State John Kerry is set to make a speech that could make tensions a whole lot worse.
And Jill Stein isn't the only one refusing to give up on the 2016 election. Jill Stein just will not go away. Michael Moore says he has a 5-step plan to get President-elect Trump kicked out of the White House. I'm sure it's a doozy.
He's not even there yet. And this 6-year-old kid might be a genius. She cracked her mom's smartphone to spend hundreds of dollars on games by using her mom's fingerprint while she was sleeping. So what happened when mom found out? We'll ask them live this hour, because mornings are better with your thumbprints.
I think we can solve it without offending America.
So I think that's a good way to go. So this is exciting.
Yeah, we're gonna analyze this as best we can.
We are going to get
later
the story.
on in the show, those women on that couch in that basement will be appearing live with us. And if we can't crack it, they're going to crack it.
Finally
so they're going to be sitting on the couch just like in that photo.
Yeah, America needs to know. I mean, this is a viral video, a photo that no one can figure out. They're going to solve it for us.
Send us what you think. Where are those legs? Why are they missing? We want to know your thoughts. See if any of you are right about this.
It'll be on our website or at our Facebook page. Take a look at it.
We should jack it up just a little bit more, though, and get Kilmeade to Skype in and maybe talk directly to the women.
I think he's going to get us all in trouble.
Let's not.
We might get in trouble. Yeah.
Brian already made his contribution to that.
It was enough.
Leave it right there. Yeah.
Well, this story about the United Nations and talking about real big stories and actual news is interesting in terms of the anti-Israeli resolution that passed last Friday. Every day there's been a new development, and a huge one is coming today in terms of Secretary of State John Kerry giving the speech 11 a.m. Eastern from the State Department, where he is going to lay out sort of the Obama administration's vision for Mideast peace. Although after what happened last Friday, how in the world can you come up with Mideast peace now? You can argue that it's gotten a lot harder because of what happened in terms of the Israel bashing that was going on.
Yeah, I mean, the speculation is that John Kerry's speech, which has been moved up, is effectively going to double down on the contours of this resolution, which most see as anti-Israeli, but they probably think is laying the groundwork for some potential hypothetical peace deal. But they're also denying involvement. They're denying that they were a part of the abstention in this UN vote that was so anti-Israel. And this is the State Department spokesman Mike Toner yesterday. Mark Toner, excuse me, talking about how they were not involved. Take a listen. We'll chat about it.
The notion that the United States was the driving force behind this resolution, that's just not true. The United States did not draft this resolution, nor did it put it forward. We also made clear at every conversation, that the president would make the final decision and that he would have to review the final text before making his final decision. So the idea that this was, again, pre-cooked or that we had agreed upon the text weeks in advance is just not accurate.
So the reason they're now on the defense, this all comes from Israel saying this was cooked up from the very beginning. You have President Obama actually leading this charge.
That was like a tortured non-denial. And when you hang it on, we weren't involved in the specific
We didn't technically write it.
Okay, so we weren't involved in the language, but there's a report this morning saying Vice President Biden was on the phone, for example, calling the Ukrainians saying, let's get this going, guys. Now, the White House hasn't commented on that, but
that's interesting.
It's when you
But Israel has.
Israel has, because we had David Keyes on last night on the Kelly File, the spokesman for the Israeli Prime Minister, further saying that they did have proof about this. Here's what he said.
We know that there was a deep collusion between the Obama administration and the Palestinians in order to push this United Nations Security Council resolution forward. I don't think that everything that I know can be shared on TV or can be shared with a global audience. I want to explain just very briefly why it's so dangerous, because it actually preempts negotiations. It tries to give the Palestinians everything they want up front. The idea that the Jewish quarter of Jerusalem, the Western Wall, is occupied territory. I mean, what if somebody brought a Security Council resolution saying the heart of Washington was occupied territory, or the London Bridge was occupied territory?
You look at what the State Department says, which is this convoluted quasi-denial, and then you hear all these Israeli spokesmen saying, we've got evidence and we're going to prove
Bang,
it.
bang, bang.
And they know, because they understand how serious this is. This isn't just a UN resolution on paper in New York City. This is land and the existence of a country. We've got a map of Israel and the pre-1967 borders, of course. Israel had to fight for its existence for decades, surrounded by enemies like Egypt and Syria and Jordan. The pre-67 borders make Israel extremely vulnerable, giving away critical land, including portions of Jerusalem, East Jerusalem, but include the old city and the actual Temple Mount and the Western Wall, the holiest sites of Judaism, and the Golan Heights there in the north. That's not academic. If they don't hold that, the huge portions of their entire country are under siege.
Well, and now it sparked this huge debate more broadly about the UN and what the purpose of the UN is, and do they have something against Israel specifically? This was really interesting. One of our producers who covers the UN, he emailed us this information yesterday. He said just a snapshot over the past year that the UN has adopted 20 anti-Israel resolutions, and you compare that to just 4 for the rest of that entire year. One was North Korea, one was Syria, one for Iran, and one for Russia. Just look at that. That is a snapshot of just this past year, what they have been focused on.
20 times you're going to denounce Israel, and once you're going to announce Iran, the big state sponsor of terror. Give me a break.
Just let that marinate for a second. Look at those numbers. Put that back up if you can. 20 anti-Israel resolutions at the United Nations, which we spend billions on every year. The world is on fire. Syria, Aleppo, ISIS, North Korea, Russia is invading Ukraine. Iran is seeking nuclear weapons. 20 against Israel. It tells you this is not an organization.
Because
the UN is not an organization that exists anymore to educate and healthcare. It exists to bash the West, and Israel being the sort of canary in the coal mine, the easiest target for them. And if Israel doesn't have the U.S., they've got no guarantor.
And coming out of that UN action, John Kerry giving this big speech today. Mark Thiessen last night on the Kelly File pointed out, with 3 weeks to go, why is the administration doing that? 3 years ago, they could have actually been taking some of the hard steps to get us closer to peace. Instead, on the way out the door,
you know what I think, Ed? I think all of this could backfire because obviously underneath it all, it is politics. And you had, as Mike Huckabee said, I think was the right thing. He said this was basically President Obama giving the big middle finger as he's walking out the door to Israel. You could see President-elect Donald Trump doubling down even when it comes to strengthen our relationship with Israel and his friendship with Benjamin Netanyahu. This could backfire.
You could see the embassy literally moving to Jerusalem, which would have a lot of ripple effects. But why now? I think they were counting on Hillary Clinton. They were counting on a slow roll extension of their policies, moving more and more toward the pro-Palestinian stance, distance from Israel.
Out a little bit.
Of course they're acting out. They're going, crap, we have to do all the things now.
You made the interesting point. Had Hillary Clinton won this election,
they wouldn't be throwing these rhetorical bombs right now at Israel. Instead, they'd be trying to set the table. So what they're doing is they're trying to leave this big mess for Donald Trump.
I think Donald Trump's going to do a very nice job cleaning that up.
We'll see what John Kerry has to say later today. But let's go over to Lisa Booth.
I can't wait to hear what John Kerry, please educate me on the Middle East. Lisa, educate the world on our headlines.
I will do my best. A Fox News alert. 2 strong earthquakes rattling across state lines overnight. The first quake was reported near the Nevada-California state line. The second happened just minutes later. They could be felt as far away as Sacramento and Carson City. So far, there are no reports of major damage or injuries. Meanwhile, tributes are pouring in as Star Wars fans mourn the loss of their princess. Governor talk. We're calling on anti-Trumpers to get the president-elect kicked out of the White House. The controversial liberal filmmaker claiming he knows just how to do it, and he laid out the steps on his Facebook page. They are making your presence known, writing to the DNC, forming a rapid response team to go to the inauguration protest, and running for office. I love this girl. And meet the Dallas Cowboys fan who just got sweet revenge on her ex-fiance. The woman holding up a sign that says, "My fiance dumped me in a text message. He should have waited until after Christmas." Well, that's because she bought him tickets to Monday night's game between the Cowboys and the Detroit Lions. She used the tickets anyways and watched her team win big, 42-21. And those are your headlines.
I love that story. Talk about revenge, and now it's all over national
Well, isn't it
television.
hell hath no fury like a woman scorned, right? That's what they say.
Just wants the tickets.
Love it. Thank you, Lisa.
The Cowboys
Guys.
won.
Thanks.
All right, so yesterday there was a scare at Trump Tower. We saw it all blowing up
Yeah.
on our phones, that there was an evacuation taking place. And of course, like everything else today, it turned political.
Yeah. Well, it shouldn't, but it does.
And it shouldn't, because there were people running from Trump Tower screaming, and I think we can hear some of that, because they were worried that there was an actual bomb.
It ended up being a backpack that was just full of toys at the end of the day. But
in real
still,
time,
you
they
don't know
didn't
what
know
that
that.
is.
Of course, this is where the president-elect lives and where they're conducting the transition. So Sean Spicer went to Twitter afterwards to clarify, and he said, back to work here at Trump Tower after a false alarm, letting people know, thanks NYPD.
Yeah.
Obviously.
It's a very simple thanks of appreciation. But Eric Phillips with Mayor de Blasio here tweeted back to Spicer, no problem. We'll send you the bill. Because remember, there was this fight about overtime pay and whatnot. And so Dan Scavino, who handles social media, basically tweeted back and said, you are an embarrassment to the mayor's office and the amazing NYPD, saying, how could you make a joke about the NYPD responding quickly to this?
Well, and you could see it as a joke, because, I mean, maybe it was, but the way that de Blasio's office had treated the Trump transition so far shows you how much animosity they have and how spiteful they've been. So it doesn't look like a joke.
Also, just a lack of respect, you
Yeah.
think, from Mayor de Blasio's office. Whether you agree with Mr. Trump's policies or not, he is the next president of the United States. And regardless of your political affiliation, there is a certain amount of respect I think everyone should hold for that office.
And the people running from Trump Tower may or may not have had anything to do with Donald Trump. There have been people who are shopping there. There might be New York City residents, some of the mayor's constituents, who were worried about what was happening.
Well, you saw that video we just showed. A lot of people running out there afraid for their lives. I mean, had something actually happened, I don't think anyone would be laughing after
Of course,
that.
I mean, people forget it. That's actually a location that people could just visit. I mean, the Trump Tower, I mean, so people are coming and going all day long. Their packages and bags are inspected. But you want to talk about see something, say something. That's the type of place where you would want to do that. So this is going to happen.
If the same kind of thing happened at the actual White House, you wouldn't see someone there tweeting about, oh, we'll send you the bill, ha, ha, ha. You know, I mean.
But it shouldn't be any different, right?
No, because it happens at the White House all the time that somebody stupidly throws a backpack over the fence and we all get locked out of the White House for a while, and then they check it, they do their job, which is what the Secret Service has to do in that case, and they clear it, but they make sure everybody's okay. So you kind of don't joke about that.
Well, I'm glad that it ended up just being a backpack full of toys and everything was okay. But I think a lesson in just the amount of respect we should hold for that office.
Well, and what the NYPD does every single day, and it is complicating that the president-elect is there, but that's the nature of the beast, and they do a great job.
All right. Well, remember when President Obama talked tough about Syria?
Red line for us is we start seeing a whole bunch of chemical weapons moving around or being utilized. That would change my calculus.
Well, his calculus never quite changed, and now President-elect Trump is inheriting a crisis, and it's not the only one. Former national security staffer inside the White House under President Obama, Jillian Turner, breaks it down next.
There she is. And when you get your wisdom teeth removed, it hurts.
It does.
That is unless you get some anesthesia.
Crying. Who's drowning? The fish are swimming.
Welcome back. President-elect Trump about to inherit a world of problems. Critics of the Obama administration point to a legacy of failed foreign policy so-called agreements that have made us weaker on the world stage. Here to break them down for us this morning, just a few of them, is Fox News contributor Jillian Turner. She was part of the White House National Security Council staff under both Presidents George W. Bush and President Obama. Good morning. Thanks for joining us. So you've seen deals like this on both sides of the aisle, but under this administration, there's been some very critical ones that are going to have implications going forward.
Yeah, I mean, there's very few people out there you're going to find, even supporters of President Obama, who are going to tell you that foreign policy has been his strength and that his legacy is going to be really solid there. There's a lot of questions open up during the course of his administration that are going to have to be answered.
A lot of chaos, a lot of open questions, as you said. One of those is the Iranian nuclear deal, which Trump has said he's going to tear apart or readjust. What are the implications of that agreement?
Well, you know, it's interesting because this deal obviously hasn't failed yet that it's still active right now. But I kind of view it's active. I view it as a fail for the American people and even for the Iranian people, who this was billed as being great for. You know, there was this whole groundswell of support from the Iranian citizens for this, because this was going to open up their economy, it was going to help them grow their national economy. And the reality is that 10 years from now, if you check back with them, most of them are not going to have significantly better lives. They're not going to have more money, and that's going to be one of the major tragedies to come from this deal that no one's talking about.
The strategic imperative for us was preventing nuclear
Iran. Right, and then there's the whole reason it's bad for us, and it's even worse for us, because I think part of what we gave up here when we sat down to the table just to negotiate here without any preconditions was the leverage we had over the Rouhani regime.
Sure.
And that's something that's going to hurt us in the long term.
Absolutely. All right, the Syrian red line, a lot of tough rhetoric that never materialized, and chaos, humanitarian disaster. What are the implications of that?
And people will push back on us and say, it wasn't really an agreement. There was nothing signed. There was nothing binding. But I would argue that something the President of the United States commits to the international community is binding, and there's an obligation for him to really account for what has gone down since he reneged on that promise.
Why does he continue to defend that decision and say, hey, I know I didn't intervene the way that I said I would, but that was the right call?
I think part of the reason is because nobody wants the United States to sort of take the fall for the ensuing civil war that we've seen over the last 4 years, which has had atrocious humanitarian consequences, as well as the refugee crisis that's ensued. It's now gone global.
Not to mention ISIS.
We don't really want to sign up for the buck on that one. But I think that had he not reneged on this, some of this could have been potentially mitigated.
It was such a moment where America's prestige was diminished because we said something and they didn't stand up to it.
An ally. We sort of disappointed a whole slew of allies that have never really gotten over it.
Absolutely. All right, the Russian New START treaty.
So this is a treaty that was signed between the United States and Russia in 2010, when there was a lot of excitement and hope about the sort of
the reset.
President Obama.
This is the button,
right. This was like everything. And the reality is that every new administration does get a clean slate. They get to decide how they're going to deal with our allies and our adversaries around the globe. Many thought that President Obama and President Putin were going to have a working relationship, but I hold this up as a failed agreement, in the sense that it kind of, there was all this hype, and we now look back 8 years later, or 6 to 7 years later, and we see how far the relationship has really deteriorated. We can't even agree on how to fight common adversaries in ISIS.
You're right. It's become an adversarial relationship where there was promise. All right, Trans-Pacific Partnership.
So last one is the TPP. This is counted as a failure because it's wilting on the vine, is basically what's come out of it.
And the president-elect has come out.
It was like a lot of hope but no chance for this to kind of happen, and now the president put a whole lot of personal capital into it. It's not going to come to be, and so it's just a whole lot of wasted energy. And
Jillian Turner, thanks a lot for your expertise.
Thanks.
And you're going to be with us all week, right?
I will.
All right, more to come on this then. And plenty of security threats to come that we'll cover. All right, it can name the fourth president of the United States or order you pizza. But can the Amazon Echo solve a murder? The groundbreaking evidence never used before. Next. Interesting. And this 6-year-old kid might be a genius, an evil genius, or a wonderful genius. She cracked her mom's smartphone, spending hundreds of dollars on games by using her mom's fingerprint on the phone while she slept. Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. So what happened when mom found out? Now that may have been when the chickens came home to roost. We're going to ask them both next hour. Look at that cutie.
John Kerry set to give a speech today on Mideast relations. Joining us now, Ed Klein, the author of Guilty as Sin. Ed, a lot going on now, certainly, and we're going to get to exactly how it appears President Obama doesn't really want to leave the stage. And part of that, though, that's big picture, but specifically this anti-Israel UN resolution where the administration just abstained. It was basically Barack Obama, again, voting present.
Yes. Well, I think he had this in mind for a long time. His relationship with Bibi Netanyahu has been so bitter. And I think this is his last shot at Netanyahu. And also, of course, trying to box in Donald Trump as he comes into office.
So that's the timing of it. You think if they were assuming a Hillary Clinton presidency, it maybe would have unfolded otherwise. Now they're getting everything done that they can at the end, which is where they really were to begin with.
I think if Hillary had won, I think they would have voted and vetoed this resolution and allowed Hillary to carry on the ball.
To tee it up for her, let's give her a chance at Mideast peace.
Exactly. Now, they don't want Trump to get his shot in, and this is there's a lot of bitterness between, between Obama and Netanyahu. I mean, Netanyahu came here, talked in front of Congress, and tried to undermine the Iran deal. Yeah. This is going on for a long time, and I think we're seeing the culmination right now.
You think the White House was surprised, though, by the backlash? Because you say it appears that they were planning this for a long time. This is our last shot at Netanyahu. And they thought maybe we're heading out the door, the president's in Hawaii, nobody's really going to notice. Right. People have noticed, and people are speaking out, including Democrats.
Absolutely. And I don't think if you look at Mr. Rhodes, the Deputy National Security Advisor, who, by the way, was the guy who set up the Benghazi, it was really a video that caused the
narrative.
I mean, they didn't expect this kind of backlash.
He also set up the narrative on the Iran deal.
That's right.
Really interesting. It seems like President Obama is having a really tough time letting go, moving on from his office gracefully, even saying a few days ago that had he been running in 2016, he would have beat President-elect Donald Trump. Have you seen this before? Because you try to imagine George W. Bush acting this way when he gave the office over to President Obama.
We have a long tradition in this country when a president is finished with his term, he packs up his clothes, he goes home, and basically buttons his lip and gives his successor a chance to run. This is the first time in, 100 years since Woodrow Wilson that a president is going to stay in Washington. They've rented the Obamas, as you know, this huge 8,200 square foot mansion in the Kalorama section of Washington.
Where all the embassies are.
Right. There's 9 bedrooms.
The Obama embassy.
Yes. And there's 1 bedroom for Valerie Jarrett, of course.
Always is.
And they've been talking behind the scenes, according to my sources, about setting up essentially a shadow government.
So you say, and I've heard you talk about that, and some of the outside organizations that would assist on that. What issues, or what areas do you think they would focus on the most? I mean, where are they going to try to preserve the legacy or fight back against a President-elect Trump?
Well, I think what we're going to see is something, this is a little exaggeration, but something that is going to look a little like the anti-Vietnam War demonstrations back in the 1960s. There's already talk about mass demonstrations during the inauguration in Washington. They're talking about storming, that's the word they use, the offices in Capitol Hill to try to stop the nominations of Trump's various appointees. They're talking Soros and a guy named Tom Steyer, the environmentalist, have already talked about devoting hundreds of millions of dollars to demonstrations, civil disobedience, op-ed pieces.
And building up sort of this big organization once he leaves office.
The president talked about that.
Yeah, he was on the Axe Files with David Axelrod opening up about those plans. Here's what he said.
With respect to my priorities when I leave, it is to build that next generation of leadership. Organizers, journalists, politicians. I see them in America, I see them around the world. 20-year-olds, 30-year-olds who are just full of talent, full of idealism. And the question is, how do we link them up? How do we give them the tools for them to bring about progressive change? And I want to use my presidential center as a mechanism for developing that next generation of talent.
You know, and when he talks about a next generation too, you play that right off what Harry Reid said a little while ago. He played the bite where he said he admitted the Democrats don't have a new generation right now. That Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders, they're all in their late 70s, so their bench is very old.
Very old. But you know, Obama is going to have a lot of competition to set up this new government that he's talking about for the future. He's got the bitter enders in the Hillary Clinton machinery who also want to be the leaders of the Democratic Party. He's got Capitol Hill. We're talking about Schumer and Nancy Pelosi. Elizabeth Warren, the left wing. I mean, there's going to be a lot of internecine battle inside the party for the heart and soul of that party.
You mentioned that. That's interesting, just sort of the bench and how many Democrats want to take the lead there. Many people saw the comment about President Obama saying he could have beat Mr. Trump as really a shot at Hillary Clinton, of all people.
It was. I mean, here, the president went around the country saying she was the most qualified candidate in history.
His legacy's on the line.
Forget Washington, Jefferson, Eisenhower, and so forth, right? And then his legacy was on the line, exactly. And what happened? He went to Michigan, North Carolina, he went to Florida, and each of those states, Pennsylvania, and each of those states went to Donald Trump.
And I feel like with that statement, it almost feels like he's going back to his sweet spot as a community organizer, as a protester, as an out and out leftist.
Yeah. Well,
he's always been there.
Always been there. I mean, that's exactly, we're going back to where he was when he first took office. Exactly.
And he wants to try to put that Obama coalition that Hillary Clinton could not put together.
Exactly.
Ed Klein, we appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
I always appreciate you breaking all this stuff down. Good to see you this morning.
He's a smart guy.
He knows a thing or two. All right, let's go over to Lisa Booth for some headlines this morning. Good morning, Lisa.
Hi, guys. Well, she made history as Afghanistan's first female Air Force pilot. Now death threats from the Taliban are forcing her to seek political asylum in the United States. Captain Nilufar Rahmani claims being a successful military woman makes it unsafe for her to live in Afghanistan. The 25-year-old was scheduled to go home last week after a 15-month training course with the U.S. Air Force. Afghan officials want her request for asylum denied. Now to Fox News alert. The Obama administration could soon be doling out a series of punishments against Russia over its possible interference in the 2016 presidential election. The Washington Post reporting those punishments could include economic sanctions and could come as early as this week. The FBI and the CIA claim they have evidence that shows Russia intervened to help Mr. Trump win. Russia continues to deny any involvement. Now get this, one of the hottest holiday gifts of the season could help police solve a murder case. Arkansas police reportedly issuing a warrant for information from James Bates' Amazon Echo device. Bates is accused of strangling and drowning a man in his hot tub. The Amazon Echo includes an electrical personal assistant that is always listening for its wake word, Alexa. Amazon is refusing to hand that information over, though. And we've got to save them. A girl coming off anesthesia at the dentist's office who thinks fish are drowning, but they just keep swimming. Nope, this isn't Finding Nemo. Listen to this.
Who's drowning? The fish are swimming.
Layla had just gotten her wisdom teeth out. Her mother heard in the background trying to tell her the fish are just fine. Those are your headlines, guys.
I love it.
That video's going to live on forever.
I know, poor thing. And it always lives forever on the internet, doesn't it?
Thank you, Lisa. Now we got it. I didn't see the fish tank before.
I know. I didn't know what it was, but when you see it, you're like,
makes sense.
Brilliant.
Yeah. You know what's brilliant is Janice Dean.
She is.
Always. Always brilliant.
Henry. Go on.
Stop that.
Keep going.
No, that's all I have to say. That's all. Beautiful and talented and amazing.
Oh,
Janice.
fantastic. Look at all my friends out here today. Where are you from?
Ooh, Vermont.
Vermont. And is it a happy birthday today?
On New Year's.
Oh, on New Year's. Are you here in New York City for New Year's?
I'm actually not, but that's my birthday present.
Oh, very nice birthday present. Any New Year's resolutions?
Probably just to work out more.
Work out more. Me too. Oh, I haven't worked out since 1984. What's your name?
Lauren.
And where are you from?
Georgia.
And is this your family here? Wave, Georgia family. What's your last name?
Hood.
Yeah, you want to say hi to anybody at home? What do you think of the weather here in New York City? Your family's here with you today.
It's cold.
It's cold. You're right. Let's take a look at the temperatures real quick. Thanks for coming, everybody. Okay, so it's cold here in New York City. 20 degrees colder than it was this time yesterday. You can wave behind me. Wave to everybody because they're all watching you on TV. You know what? I'm just going to get out of the way. You guys just wave while I'm doing this, okay? So here's the next big storm system. This is a nor'easter that is going to bring a lot of rain along the coast and some snowfall across New England. So this is going to be our big weather maker as we head into Thursday and Friday. Anybody traveling on Thursday? No, that's a good thing. All right, well, I'll keep you posted. By Friday, this is out of the way, and then we'll have a very nice New Year's Eve, which is good news because Kimberly Guilfoyle and Eric Bowling are going to be outside in the elements, so it's good news. Wave to everybody. More Fox and Friends for a New Year's resolution, right? Oh, you're so quiet. Okay, back inside.
Janice, get him fired up.
I know. Let's get him going this morning, Janice.
I love that. She's always got enough energy.
It was almost like Jeb Bush. Please clap.
Please, I remember that. Yeah,
Clap now.
bad. All right, coming up, President Obama racing to make good on his promise to close down Guantanamo Bay. But our next guest says even if he does, it's still a complete failure. An Army Ranger who served at Gitmo here next with a warning.
And this photo is still stumping and breaking the internet. 6 girls, but only 5.
50 minutes now to the top of the hour. Back with some quick headlines. Remember this viral photo of Hillary Clinton hiking after her election loss? Well, her former rival, Senator Bernie Sanders, was also spotted in the wild, sampling cheddar cheese at, you guessed it, Costco. And it makes sense that he was spotted there since the self-proclaimed socialist loves the idea of paying for things in bulk like education and healthcare and weed, guns and catfish. New laws and big changes starting January 1st. You can ring in the new year smoking a joint with a glass of champagne if you live in Massachusetts and California. That's my plan. Also in California, gun owners face new restrictions and people in Illinois have to find a new way to catch catfish using pitchforks. Spear guns and bow and arrows will be illegal. Those are some headlines, Pete.
I usually hunt with some sort of a spear.
She's on the curvy couch. She's not in Massachusetts on New Year's. Come on.
Oh, you're right. All right, with less than a month left in his term, President Obama racing to complete one of his signature vows, freeing the final detainees and closing Guantanamo Bay.
This, as we learn, nearly a third of those already released have allegedly turned back to terror. Here to react, former Gitmo medical officer and author of Saving Grace at Guantanamo Bay, Major Montgomery Granger. Good morning. We appreciate you joining us.
Good morning. Thank you very much.
What do you make of the president? It really appears he made this bold promise 8 years ago about shutting it down. He could not get it done during that whole time. He's trying to do everything he can to empty those prisoners as quickly as he can.
He is, and it's despicable. But if you could say that because he declared unilaterally that the global war on terror was over in 2013, maybe he considers all of the detainees to be victims. I noticed in the article in the Wall Street Journal yesterday, talked about 30% known and suspected recidivists from released detainees. What about the other 70% we don't know about? Where are they?
Yeah. We don't know. I mean, a lot of it is uncertain and unknown. It could be higher than that. I mean, Major, here he is with less than 30 days in his term. He would close it if he could, but Congress has boxed him in at some level. What would you predict he's going to do with the time that he has left?
Well, he's already sort of shown his hand that he wants to release about 18 additional what I consider very dangerous detainees back into the fight, which again is unconscionable. These guys would like nothing better than to kill us all. And for us to win this war on terror, all Islamists have to die, or we have to take away their will and means to kill us. And Guantanamo Bay is an important part of winning the war on terror. It is, in fact, the best, safest place for detainees, unlawful combatants in the war on terror. There is no moral comparison between Gitmo and what our enemies do with their captives. We haven't executed anyone, beheaded anyone, hacked anyone to death, dragged anybody lifeless through the streets, or burned anyone alive. All things that our enemies have done to us and or our allies.
Major, at a White House news conference a couple years ago, I pressed the president actually on some of these stats, and he pushed back on me and said, no, it's not true about the detainees being released and going back into terror. You've actually investigated this, so I wonder what evidence do you have that he's actually wrong and that they do go back to terror?
Well, there's a long laundry list. Some have actually gone back and become leaders in terrorist organizations, and that's been all over the news. It really is incredible.
The Taliban 5 as well that he swapped.
The Taliban 5, that was a shock. But you know what? Nothing shocks me anymore regarding this president in Guantanamo Bay. It really is a scary scenario, but there seems to be light at the end of the tunnel. I believe that President-elect Donald Trump will do everything he can to protect Americans.
Well, speaking of that, you mentioned the massive misconception of Guantanamo Bay. You served there, I did there. I went back a year ago. It's amazing how we bend over backwards for these detainees and how they're treated. How do you anticipate this facility being used by a President-elect Trump? If it looks like it will stay open, even though the numbers will go down, it could ramp back up. What's the best way to utilize it?
Well, I spent 9 years with U.S. Army military police units with enemy prisoner of war functions. And I really think that what we need to do is improve it. Think of it. All of us pay our taxes and we give them free Qurans, prayer rugs, prayer beads, directions to Mecca, free services of the United States military, Muslim chaplain,
DVDs, movies, video games,
holiday meals. I think we need to step that back a little bit and remember that although it's not a penal institution, we're not punishing detainees, we're keeping them, and it should be a little bit more Spartan.
No, it's true. When I went back there, satellite televisions with 300 channels to choose from, actually 2 TVs in case you don't like what you're watching on one, you can watch the other. These are radical Islamists seeking our destruction. Absolutely. We're treating them as common prisoners.
And we're paying for that.
And we're all paying for it.
Well done, Major. Good luck with the book. We appreciate you coming in.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. All right. Well, this photo is stumping the internet and the couch this morning. Okay, you see this right here. You got to take a look. 6 girls, but only 5 sets of legs. What's really going on? I mean, where is it? This is a mystery, and there are theories, and we're going to get to the bottom of it. Theories. And these girls, they're joining us. There they are, live from that couch, recreating the pose, wearing the exact same clothes.
I'm counting it out. I see 6 sets of legs, right?
I see a lot. I see 5. I see 6 sets of hands, but only 5 sets of legs.
Okay, they'll give us a story finally. But first, on this day in 1846, Iowa became the 29th state to be admitted to the Union. In 1945, Congress officially recognized the Pledge of Allegiance. And in 1979, Rupert Holmes was topping the charts with his hit, Escape.
Good morning. It is Wednesday, December 28th. I'm Abby Huntsman in for Ainsley Earhart this morning. We begin with a Fox News alert, and this just in, a possible smoking gun that shows the Obama administration's involvement in the anti-Israel resolution. And John Kerry reportedly had a significant role in this.
John Kerry, always there. All right, and drama kicking up for the Rockettes, who are about to go perform at President-elect Trump's inauguration. One Rockette trashing her fellow performers who they want to be there. But that's not all, and we'll tell you about it. Ed's excited about that story.
And also excited about, you just heard our theories about this picture. Where's that missing set of legs? Well, this hour, we're going to solve the mystery. When all that women in that photo, they're joining us live from Wisconsin.
America needs to know, Ed.
Time to get dressed. The ladies are dressed. They're coming up live
and they're laughing at us, too.
That was not enough.
Oh, there's not
go-karts.
Pile on some go-karts on top. This kids are going to test these new mini bikes and go-karts on our plaza. I guarantee you, I will be on one of those mini bikes. I don't care what the weight restriction is.
I can always say, this is what I love about Fox and Friends. You just never know what's going to happen on this show.
From any moment, you could be doing a couch in Wisconsin, a go-kart in New York, or Mid-East Peace.
Mid-East Peace.
Yeah.
It's called flexibility, brother.
There is some breaking news on that this morning, actually, Ed. Some new reports in.
Yeah, basically a report suggesting that Secretary of State John Kerry, way back in early December, sat down with Palestinian leaders to start mapping out this strategy at the UN. We're looking to get comment, obviously, from the administration about that. All we do know from our own reporting is that there was a meeting. We've looked at State Department schedules and whatnot between Secretary of State John Kerry and these Palestinian leaders. What we don't know is whether or not they actually talked about this resolution. That part hadn't leaked out until this report just moments ago. Why is that significant? The administration in the last few days has been saying, what, us involved in this resolution? I don't know what we're talking about. If they were plotting and planning this as Israel has charged,
you can't know,
going back to
you can't know what was
December.
Discussed, right? But it's just like Loretta Lynch and Bill Clinton on the tarmac, right? Before the decision was made.
Come on, Pete.
They were just talking about golf.
They were talking about grandkids.
Just talking about golf and grandkids. I mean, listen, this looks orchestrated, sounds orchestrated, is orchestrated, and nothing happens in the Security Council or at the UN, especially on a vote like Israel, without us knowing about it. And an abstention like that, there were gasps in the UN chamber when Samantha Power did not raise her hand no and instead raised her hand to abstain. I mean, this is something that has sent ripple effects across the globe.
Yeah, and Israel, they're the ones saying we have got real proof here that this has been pre-orchestrated from the beginning, from President Obama, from his administration. David Keyes, the spokesman for the Israeli Prime Minister, was on the Kelly File last night and doubled down on that evidence. Here's what he said.
We know that there was a deep collusion between the Obama administration and the Palestinians in order to push this United Nations Security Council resolution forward. I don't think that everything that I know can be shared on TV or can be shared with a global audience. I want to explain just very briefly why it's so dangerous, because it actually preempts negotiations. it tries to give the Palestinians everything they want up front. The idea that the Jewish quarter of Jerusalem, the Western Wall, is occupied territory. I mean, what if somebody brought a Security Council resolution saying the heart of Washington was occupied territory, or the London Bridge was occupied territory?
So we had Ed Klein on the couch last hour, and he's saying what a number of folks, including Ambassador John Bolton, is saying, that people shouldn't be surprised by this, that if this is the case, and it had been pre-orchestrated by the Obama administration, the relationship between Netanyahu and President Obama has not been good from the beginning. You look over the past 8 years, there has been a strain there. So to sit here and say, how could this have happened? As Ed Klein said, this has been worked up for the past few years. Now they're just acting on it.
And interesting, I'm hearing that we've just learned that Steny Hoyer, a prominent Democrat, obviously, is urging Secretary of State Kerry not to go forward with these remarks. So we want to get more information on that. That would add even more intrigue here. Why would he be saying that? Well, number one, you've had prominent Democrats like Chuck Schumer, the incoming Senate Democratic leader from right here in New York, saying he didn't agree with what the administration did, number one. And number two, there's a lot of people puzzled. Now even it appears Democrats like Steny Hoyer, not just Republican critics. Why would John Kerry come out here now? It appears that he's going to push back on Benjamin Netanyahu, defend President Obama, of course, and just make this perhaps even worse. And how does that move the peace process forward?
Well, it doesn't.
So when Democrats are saying, hey, hold up, buddy, that's interesting.
Steny Hoyer apparently saying that it flies in the face of longstanding policy of the United States, this speech and what they're attempting to do. They were hoping they would have Hillary Clinton. That would be an extension of what they've been trying to do. They don't. They've got Donald Trump, so they're trying to box him in. You've said, Abby, a couple of times, this could really backfire on them. Donald Trump has been a staunch supporter of Israel, and I think understands how precarious their situation truly is. I mean, this isn't just a UN resolution. This is about land and about the future and the existence of a state. And we put up the map a couple of times, and we won't geek out forever, but the reality is land in that area is precious, and there's also huge historic and religious ties. And after the 67 war, Israel was able to secure land that protected their very viability, the Golan Heights, the Gaza Strip, which they've given away, and then the so-called West Bank, Judea and Samaria, and East Jerusalem, which contains the Old City, the Temple Mount, the Western Wall, the Jewish Quarter, all of which John Kerry and Barack Obama are willing to give away.
He wants to go back, Kerry, in the speech, to the pre-1967 borders. That's why that map is
and this has brought up an even bigger debate about the UN, about the purpose of the UN. How impactful is it? And at the end of the day, is it just really sticking it to Israel? Will, I want to pull this up because this just gives you a snapshot of the past year and the things that the UN has focused on. 20 anti-Israel measures have been brought forth at the UN.
They've probably gone after North Korea a lot, too, right?
North Korea is one of them. One an anti-Iran, one anti-Syria, one anti-Russia. So 4 compared to 20 anti-Israel resolutions.
Iran, a state sponsor of terror, we're going to do one resolution saying, hey, let's slap you on the wrist. But 20 against Israel.
You've got China building artificial islands in the South China Sea. You've got a migrant crisis. You've got a refugee crisis. You've got ISIS. You've got Syria. All of this going on in the world. Aleppo. And we got 20. The UN has become nothing but a breeding ground for anti-Semitism and a bludgeon against the West, primarily against Israel. And if the United States is not there to defend them, then nobody else is. And Bibi Netanyahu said it so well. Friends don't take friends to the Security Council. And what we did there was throw Israel under the bus. And this is a bipartisan issue. As you said, you brought up Steny Hoyer, but a guy even like Chuck Schumer and others have been staunch defenders of Israel. They're going to fight back against this. And President-elect Trump's instinct is to do something like scrap the two-state solution or move the embassy to Jerusalem.
You're going to have Congress taking a serious look at they're going to look at these resolutions over the past year and say, this is not right. We're going to have to take a vote and see how we want to move forward on this.
The very viability of the UN is at stake. I mean, a lot of us have questioned it for a long time. But if this is what you're spending your time on, why are we funding you?
And this report we're talking about is in the New York Post. Daniel Halper, an excellent reporter, quoting a statement from Steny Hoyer, a blistering statement, saying that he wants John Kerry to pull back on this speech scheduled for 11 a.m. Eastern. So when you have not just random backbenching Democrats, but a leader in the Congress, the Democratic whip in the House, Steny Hoyer, saying, time out, don't go forward with this speech.
This is complicated, and because John Kerry was not supposed to speak today. He was supposed to speak maybe next week. They moved that up because I'm guessing they weren't expecting the backlash they were going to get, and now they're getting pushed to not give this speech. This is getting really complicated.
Of course, you know what else gets complicated? When you hand over land to PLO and Palestinian authorities, and it always turns into a terrorist haven. Southern Lebanon, the Gaza Strip, the West Bank, that's what's happened. So why are we not learning the lessons of the past and saying, if this is a process, let's do it on terms that actually make sense or comport with reality on the ground?
A lot going on this morning. Lisa Booth has some other headlines as well.
Good morning, Lisa.
Hi, guys.
Good morning.
Hey, how are you doing?
Good. Good to see you.
It's always good to see you. And on to some more international news. Now to a Fox News alert. Iranian officials claiming to have warned U.S. military forces in that country's airspace. An Iranian general says they've issued warnings to a dozen fighter jets and drones as they conduct military drills. This is the latest episode in a tense year with Iran. A U.S. Navy ship was forced to fire warning shots when an Iranian vessel got too close in August. And last January, U.S. sailors were taken into custody when they sailed into Iranian waters. The Star Wars universe is a little bit darker this morning as fans pay tribute to their princess.
You hear nothing?